In the studio with MJ with Sundberg. It's going to be interesting.
Michael Jackson, live in concert, Auckland, November 9.
I think we have it. I'm trying to find that. I gotta write the bridge. What's the first word of the bridge?
So tonight we go in the studio with Michael Jackson, MJ. In the studio with MJ with Sundberg. It's going to be interesting to see what this thing is about. We met for a meal with some fellow enthusiasts of the music and the curiosity behind what in the studio with Michael Jackson was all about.
I need to take a photo. In the studio.
Making our way down spooky corridor stairs to a studio area where we would be greeted by Sundberg, who would share a enlightening period of time with working in the studio with Michael, and the story behind and how he became involved in working alongside those studio producers that generated and put together some of the greatest hits in pop music history. Sundberg, it was just an ordinary guy, pretty much sweeping floors and making coffee, and then became a studio engineer. And a very cool story to have that insight into how the music was made, and also how the process of what Michael would do and how they would come about and making up songs from the era of recording onto tape and multi-tracks and all that kind of stuff. I've got to say it was very, very enlightening and pretty damn awesome. We've been to In the Studio with MJ with Sundberg. Went to it without expecting anything, just expecting it to be a guy speaking about some stuff and not so sure whether it's legit or not or whatever, but coming out of the presentation left with a feeling that there was a cool intimate look behind the scenes of what and how music and the man Michael Jackson created sound. Very cool. How was the show, bub?
It was wonderful, it really was. He was very enlightening, and it was very emotional. I didn't expect to feel the way that I did. He talked about creating Michael's song I Just Can't Stop Loving You. That was the moment for me. That was Quentin and Mai's wedding song. So to hear 30 years later someone talking about how it was created, and to hear the layers of music into that song, just blew me away. I cried.
After a 23-year wait, Michael Jackson fans will finally...
While in Auckland for the Sundberg experience, we also went and stayed at what once was Carlton Hotel. Michael Jackson came and stayed at that hotel before and during his concert series of November 9th and November 11th, 1996, of the History concert tour, which was pretty damn amazing. Concert tickets only $75. And it was something else to see these planes on the tarmac when Michael arrived. We weren't in Auckland at the time of his arrival, but we did watch the video footage of that period until we did end up in Auckland.
A long day for Michael Jackson fans waiting to catch a glimpse of the superstar.
Meanwhile, strict security's in force at the Star's Auckland Hotel.
Somewhat iconic, Michael stepping off the plane and being greeted by Sir Howard Morrison, receiving a token gift.
Travelling on this jet with Mr. Jackson, of course, an entourage of somewhere near 200 coming to New Zealand for the two concerts. He'll be performing 3.5 hours, playing to something like 38,000 people. Now that Greenstone pendant and a hongi for Sir Howard. Two indeed. 3 years since he's been to this country, and you can see he's got...
Do you have a message for Māori children of New Zealand? The Indigenous children of New Zealand?
We would love to visit them. Tell them that.
Michael's arrival into New Zealand, the superstar that he was greeted with so much enthusiasm and anticipation.
Welcome to the world of Michael Jackson.
Inside, a traditional welcome. And finally, two gifts from two lucky young fans. Young Luke Weaver gave the king a buzzy bee and received a kiss in return.
Do you have a message for Michael?
Yes, Michael. I love you.
Jacko Mania had come to town.
His trademark wide-brimmed hat proved a temporary barrier to cultural exchange. He made the superstar with a song of his own. They were there at his request.
staying in the hotel, we reflected on the moment that Michael stepped out onto the balcony and was greeted by the many fans. So this, when it was the Carlton Hotel, was where Michael Jackson stood on the balcony when there was mayhem out on the courtyard area down there. Wasn't it nice?
It is. It is. His view was just a sea of Kiwis screaming for him.
At the time we just watched it on the TV because we were still at home.
Yeah.
We could have had our lunch up here.
So he would have stood right.
Nest standing overlooking an empty area. Times have changed, but not that much. It's also very similar and familiar to what we experienced back in 1996.
And just moments ago, their wish was granted. This is Alistair Wilkinson for Nightline.
Classic Jackson that hundreds of fans turned out to see, and they weren't disappointed. Fans' pavement outside Auckland's Carlton Hotel went wild when the 34-year-old megastar emerged last night, just hours after jetting into Auckland by private plane.
Too much.
We remember another moment. Yeah. So this is where we would have stood back in 1996 when Michael Jackson was up in the hotel up the top there.
It really is big.
Shall we pick up across the road, Vanessa?
We were hoping to visit the presidential suite, but unfortunately it was under renovations at the time of our visit.
This is where he'll be staying, the Royal Suite at the Carlton Hotel. It's 5 times the size of a normal room and costs about $1,800 a night. There's a grand piano for the maestro to play on, and in the bathroom, the ultimate thriller, a 7-nozzle shower.
There was one moment during the tour where Michael had been out and about, and he was returning back to the hotel through the main entrance, and a whole bunch of us people were waiting in anticipation of his return. Security were warding us off and telling us not to come any closer, but we didn't. Made a beeline.
Can you please move back a little bit?
Definitely represents the hysteria of that moment, which was pretty damn iconic, to be honest.
Marcus!
Thank you so much. That's all we wanted. We wanted to start moving back to get other gardens. Please. Can everyone just start moving back, please? Take your place, move back. I don't know.
Okay, can you please move back that way?
We're good. Gardens were wrecked. They look wrecked now, actually, don't they?
Actually, that's how I remember them.
Yeah.
It was just like that.
It was truly cool to be able to spend some time and reflect back on a time of many much younger, and a time of great memories. At this point, Michael was leaving the hotel to head to Starship Hospital, where we would farewell, head our own way there.
What a shame, Dale.
Fans.
That's it, that's what we want.
We'll wait
Just a glimpse
hours
would be
and hours.
enough.
We don't care if we wait 12 hours and only see him for 1 second. 1 second's worth it.
It's worth it, man.
Definitely.
He's the best.
And while waiting outside, we were fortunate enough for Michael to sign a couple of caps that we had purchased at the show on the 9th, which was pretty damn iconic for a couple of young fans that loved his music, loved the essence of the creative genius that Michael Jackson surely was. I'm sure it still remains today. Thanks so much for watching. Until the next one, take care. We'll see you next time, eh?